Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda and I'm so glad that you could join me today. In today's video, we're going to be continuing on in our series learning about different religions and their beliefs. So far, we've started with the oldest. We started with Hinduism, and then we started to do the two different offshoots of Hinduism. So we did Jainism, and now we are doing Buddhism. So if you are interested in Buddhism, hit that intro and let's begin. So, in today's episode, we're going to start talking about Buddhism. Buddhism is one of the offshoots or divisions within Hinduism. It started at Hinduism and then there were breaks off for a reason. We're going to talk about that, and because it's the last break off of Hinduism that we're going to talk about, I'm also going to do kind of like a comparison between Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism at the end. But first, we need to understand what Buddhism is, right? So let's get started at the beginning. So Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism. It was started by a man named Siddhartha Gautama, and it was around 5 BC or before Common Era. This individual later became known as Buddha, which means awakened one. So the story goes that he had this huge enlightenment that happened when he was having a meditation underneath a Bodhi tree. And he had this profound realization, particularly about the nature of life, death, and existence. And with this awakening, this experience, this realization at this meditation, he decided that they needed to practice in a certain way that veered off from Hinduism. So he spent the rest of his life after having this profound awakening teaching other people, not necessarily how they could walk in his path and like how he came to get it, but how they could help themselves get to their own enlightenment. Does that make sense? So he wasn't trying to teach people like, oh, this is what I did, this is what you should do. His profound awakening was more about he didn't even fully share what everything he did to get him to that point of awakening, but he shares, this is what you should do, this is why you should do it. And doesn't necessarily tie it all back to, you should do it because I did it. So that's different. There's a core to his teaching that is very important. It is that direct experience is more important than belief or dogma. So Buddhism is more about what are you doing than what do you believe. Okay, actions are very important in Buddhist practices. So what does it believe? So let's talk about its beliefs, okay? Basically, they are more practice-based than belief-based. Like I said, the actions are more important in Buddhism than their beliefs. They have beliefs, but what they do to show those beliefs is different. They believe that the way to enlightenment, so they do believe in reincarnation. Let's just get that out there. Just like Hinduism and Jainism. They believe in reincarnation. However, they believe the way you get enlightened is through a thing called the Eightfold Path. Okay? So it's different ways to gain enlightenment. It is the right view or the right understanding. So the discovery and the idea that the true nature of reality, it's not just what it appears, it's the insight to know what's the reason behind it. Okay? The right intention. So having unselfish desires to realize full enlightenment is crucial. You can't just be doing it for your own reasons. You have to just be giving to other people and helping everybody be good. Number 3 is the right speech. They believe that when you speak, you should be very compassionate with it. Again, they're very much into their actions, so the right speech. You shouldn't speak hatefully. You shouldn't speak ill of other people. You are having the right speech. Okay. The next one is the right action. Living in using ethical conduct to manifest compassion. So the way you carry out your life in day to day matters. How you treat other people, how you treat your boss, how you treat the animals that live in your home, how you encounter bugs, how you deal with wildlife, all of that matters greatly to the Buddhists. Okay. The next one is the right livelihood. It's not saying that doctors are good and lawyers are bad. No, that's not what it's meaning. They're talking more specifically about how you live your life. Are you being more helpful or more harmful? So making a living that is more helpful than harmful. Are you cutting down all the trees and burning all the land? Or are you helping people who are sick? Are you taking or are you giving? That's what they're more focused on. The next one is the right effort. They believe that cultivating wholesome qualities and releasing unwholesome qualities is important to gain that enlightenment. So making sure you have the right intentions and have that wholesome, good-natured aspect about you is very important. Next, they believe that it should be the right mindfulness. So they think their whole body and mind are both connected and they both have awarenesses. So you can purposefully swerve your car to not hit the deer that's running across the road. That would be a physical response, but mentally you should also be responding in a way of compassion to make sure that you're being aware of what's around you and the animals and taking care of them. And if you do hit an animal, like making sure that you care for that animal until they reach their demise, or reaching their demise with as little pain and discomfort as possible. It's just a different way to think about it. And then the last of the Eightfold Path is the right concentration. So again, they're very action focused. So meditation is huge. It's right up there with the dedication and the concentration. So they believe that you should be practicing this continually. Not meaning like all day long, but throughout the day. Okay, very important. They also believe, so they have the Eightfold Paths, and they believe that those Eightfold Paths are broken into 3 main areas that they focus on. So all those different things that I just listed, they'll focus on 3 main things, 3 main areas to meditate. Now, the goal of most Buddhists is that they meditate at least 3 times a day. Many will meditate well over that, 6, 9, 12. They typically do it in 3s though, so they can focus on those 3 different paths. So there's the wisdom path, which is focusing on your view and your intention. And then there's the ethical path, focusing on your speech, your actions, and your livelihood. And then there's the mental discipline path, focusing on your effort, focusing on your mindfulness, focusing on your concentration. Each of those are specific and they're slightly different. So in the wisdom path, for example, again, it's not focusing on a doctrine. It's focusing on how they're perceiving true nature of ourselves and the world around us. What, based on your actions, did you perceive this interaction at the grocery store the right way? Could someone perceive your actions in a different way, being mindful of that? Looking at intention, they'll look at transfers of energy. What are you fixating on? What are you stressing about? What are you focusing on that's wasted energy? Are you focusing on positive things or negative things? Are you thinking people have good intentions or ill intentions of you? Just focusing that mindset. In the ethical portion, they want to very much focus on what they have said and how they have acted throughout their day that far. So have they caused any people harm? They'll think back on their actions and what they said. Could anyone have misinterpreted anything they've said or done to be harmful? How can they fix that and move forward from that? How can what they do be more helpful in the future? And then looking at the mental discipline area, they focus on cutting through delusions. So being aware enough that your perception is not the only perception, and making sure that your perception is as free of bias as possible. So that's their focus on for that. They also seek meditation for clarity and focus of mind. So when they meditate, they will do it outside. They will do it by a statue or a temple, that or a little shrine that they have in their home. But they will do a lot of chanting, and sometimes they'll just focus on a sound because they feel like that drowns out everything else that's around them. They can focus on the right intentions then, if they quiet all the other noise that's in their head and around them. So that's that. Now, when you talk about the afterlife and what Buddhists believe, they believe in reincarnation, just like Hinduism, just like Jainism, but it's slightly different. They believe that as they evolve and get better, become better people, they go through a process called samsara. So it's the reincarnation at death. They just call it samsara, okay? They believe that rebirth occurs in the form of God, demigod, human, animal, hungry ghost, or hell creature. Based on your actions and thoughts, you will be reincarnated in one of those levels. Now, interestingly, Buddhism is different from Hinduism. As far as Hinduism, it's like a spiral process, where it's not quite a spiral process with Buddhism. It's not like, oh, you were a bee last time, now you'll be reincarnated as a human. No, if you were a human and you did horrible things, you could be downgraded to a hungry ghost and skip the animal portion completely. It's different. It's different beliefs, and they don't necessarily view that they can judge any people and say what level they'll be at. They believe that that's something for samsara to do at the time of your death. Again, it goes back to speaking appropriately and ethically to other people. So they wouldn't say bad things about somebody because it would come back on them, essentially. Now, some have asked, well, how do they worship? So there are temples, there are Buddhist monasteries, there are Buddhist temples, but people don't typically go there to pray or worship at any certain time. Again, it's very action focused. So going to a specific place isn't necessary for their benefit. Okay. They quite honestly say that the temple is no better than worshiping at home or worshiping outdoors. It's your intention and your actions that follow it up that matter. If you're at home, like I said, you may have a shrine. Typically, there's always a statue of Buddha. Buddha is the main person that Buddhists look to as an example of how they should live their life, how they should focus on different aspects, the Eightfold Path and the 3 ways in order to reach that enlightenment. So it's typically a statue of Buddha, there's typically candles, and there's typically some kind of incense, again, to help you focus during your meditation. A lot of people will focus on statues or images of Buddha. That's just what they do. If you're in nature, they don't typically have Buddha statues just hanging in the trees, but they do like to focus on Buddha as that's their goal of who they want to emulate, follow his advice type thing. If you go to a temple, it's typically a stone structure. It's always a stone structure. It's not typically made out of wood. And you'll notice that the 5 elements are always symbolized with them. The 5 elements being fire, air, earth. So all temples, all Buddhist temples have a square base to represent the earth, okay? There will be some kind of water feature, and there will be wisdom. So if you look at the top of any of the Buddhist temples, there's always this long pointy thing, and they believe that is wisdom. Again, it's not typically considered one of the elements, but in Buddhism, they consider wisdom one of the elements. And that tall, skinny part is known as the pinnacle, and it's on the top of the building. That's supposed to be their connection to the wisdom that is received from the higher gods, okay? Getting that enlightenment from Buddha and things like that. If you go to a temple, there will be a Buddha statue, and it will not be a small one, okay? There's typically at least one Buddha statue near the door when you're coming in to identify that this is a Buddhist temple, and there will be at least one statue inside the temple area. Now, if you are going to a temple, to a Buddhist temple, you should be aware that there's most likely not going to be chairs. You're going to be sitting on the floor, you're going to be barefoot, and you're going to be chanting. Again, these are all grounding things to help drown out everything else that's around you. You will likely listen to monks and participate in chants with the monks. Sometimes they'll do religious chants that are based on text. Sometimes it'll be just different chants that are common to the area, or sounds that are common to the area to drown out the other noise. There's a lot of mantras that are repeated, quite a few, and we'll get into that, not a problem. Some, because of the mantras, they're repeated so frequently, many people will carry prayer beads, kind of like in Catholicism, they have the rosary with the beads that mean different things. But the mantra, the prayer beads for Buddhists are typically a circle, with one being larger than the other, just so that they can count how many times they have chanted each thing before they move on to the next thing. That's just the way they count it. It's very big about repetition. There may also be a prayer wheel. Now, when I think of prayer wheel, this just may be showing my age, but I picture like Wheel of Fortune or The Price is Right, one of those big wheels that they'd spin. And I just picture the monk going up there and going, let's see which prayer it is today. It's not that. Sorry to disappoint you. It's not that. It's basically a wheel with the different main prayers that they say. So there's a prayer that they would say at each different time, and for each of the different elements. And they will literally just take and turn it. So if you lost track in your mantra of where people are, you can kind of look up and use it as a reference as to what prayer you guys are on next. Okay, so again, Buddhists are very big into actions, not just words or beliefs. So how they celebrate their holidays is also very intriguing. It's all very focused around Buddha and Sagamatha Gutha, his main points in life. So there are 4 main holidays. There are other minor holidays, but these are the 4 main ones. There is Buddha Day, also known as Viskra, and it's when they celebrate Buddha becoming enlightened, his birth, and his death. It's all on one. So what do? Well, they clean the temple and they decorate their Buddha statues with flowers. That's how they celebrate. Nothing really else. They clean the temple and they decorate the Buddha statue with flowers out of respect. Okay. There is Bodhi Day because the enlightenment happened underneath this Bodhi tree. So they will go ahead and they will do meditating, they will chant, and it will involve the Bodhi tree in some way, shape, or form. You might do these meditations and chants underneath a tree. You might plant a tree. You might sponsor a tree. You might decorate a tree, but you're going to have the Bodhi tree involved with that in some way, shape, or form. The third one they have is Dharma Day. So Dharma celebrates when Buddha began teaching. So what they do, again, is they give offerings to the temple and they meditate. I know, so far their holidays don't seem super fun to celebrate, right? Growing up as a Christian, we had Christmas and we had Easter and we had different activities that we would do, and it was more fun-filled. The holidays in the Buddhist tradition, it's not about having fun, it's about remembering and celebrating these important events that occurred. And you can enjoy life and celebrate at different times for different reasons, but it's not necessarily about Buddhism. Okay. And then the fourth holiday that I'm going to cover is Katama, and that's the celebration of generosity and community. So in Buddhist culture, some of the men are Buddhist monks. They don't have any possessions. What they will do is on Katama, they will offer robes to these individuals. They don't have any possessions. The robes they wear are the robes they share with everybody unless they don't fit anybody else, and then they'll just make do with it. So on that day, there's like little rectangle-ish slots in the Buddhist monasteries, and they will place these gifts of robes or monetary donations for the monks and the monastery that they are living in, the Buddhist temple. So just out of gratitude for their devotion and their leadership and their example within the community. Very intriguing. I like that they are caring for each other, and I like that they are really making actions be their main thing. I enjoy that. I think that's awesome. Now, if you wanted to convert to Buddhism, this one was a little bit different for me. So I was born a Christian, and I'm currently on the path of converting to Judaism. And that has many different steps. In Buddhism, because it's not about necessarily what you believe, it's about your actions, the conversion process is very different. So there's really only 4 main parts. And the fourth part, quite honestly, is partially optional. Okay, so number 1, you have to have a basic understanding of the Buddhist concepts. They don't expect you to be a scholar of it. They want you to understand the Eightfold Way, the Eightfold Paths. They want you to understand the 3 ways. They want you to understand basic terminology in Buddhism, but that's about it. Okay, they want you to understand the basic. They know that you're going to learn more as you are a part of it. Number 2, they want you to explore the different types. At one time there were 18 different types right after Buddha passed, but today there's 2 main schools or types that are practiced, and we're going to talk about them in a little bit. That's Theravada and Mayaman. I probably butchered them, and I apologize. But those are the 2 main schools or thoughts, okay? After you do that, they want you to visit a Buddhist temple. They want you to become engaged with the Buddhist community. Again, it's through your actions, not your thoughts or your beliefs, that you are truly Buddhist in your life. So they want you to visit a temple. They want you to talk to other people who are Buddhist so you can really understand and put actions behind your thoughts. Okay, I thought that was a good idea. And then the fourth one, which was interesting to me, it's semi-optional. So they want you to participate in something called the ceremony of taking refuge in the triple gem. Okay, so basically this is a ceremony that happens during a temple experience. So they go to the temple, and it is where someone vows to uphold the 5 precepts. So the not killing other people, being kind, basically the 8-fold ways that it's just combined down to 5. And you need to promise this, okay? It's conducted in the temple, but the tricky part is you don't have to be the one completing the vows. which I thought was very surprising. If you were converting to it, I thought you would be the one expected to do it. No, there are people who choose to watch someone else participate in it, and because it's about actions, not what you think or you believe. If you are participating in it and you know you are Buddhist in your heart, then once you are finished watching Susie go through this taking refuge in the triple gem, then you're Buddhist and no one will question it. There's no paperwork or no trails or nothing like that. It's how you live your life. So that was interesting to me. I really thought that you personally would have to complete the taking refuge on the triple gem, but that's not the case. So there you go. Now back to talking about the different schools. So there are, again, when Buddha passed, there was 18 different divides of Buddhism as far as how they practice. All the different divides are specifically about the interpretation of Buddha's teachings. So they all had slightly different interpretations. The two main schools now are the Theravada, and this is the more conservative, more traditional, more rational, scientific focused group. This is the larger of the two. This is also the older of the two. So they're just very, very literal, very conservative about their practices. And then there's the Maya Man group. These have lots of traditions, just like the other ones. They have lots of traditions. They don't do as many, but they're more focused on the rituals and the mysticism. Okay, so one side is very logical, scientific focused. One side is very traditional, but also incorporates more mysticism. And so the easiest way to see the difference between them is to look at how they view monks. Okay, so the Buddhist monks. In the Theravada, the more traditional one, monks are viewed as fully enlightened individuals. Fully enlightened. So they're like way up there. They are higher than humans, but they're not gods or demigods. Okay, they're just enlightened individuals. In the Mahayanan, I butchered that like repeatedly. I apologize. In that second group that's more ritual focused and mysticism, they view monks as supernatural. They view them as not human. They're beyond human. So that was just a different way of looking at that. They're beyond human. They don't have the same needs, desires, wants as the rest of the world. They're beyond human. So just looking at them in a supernatural way instead of, no, they're just fully enlightened. They're on a different level. That was intriguing. So wrapping it all back up, we talked about Hinduism, we talked about Jainism, we talked about Buddhism. How do they compare? How are they similar? What's the difference? So to make it similar again, they all of them were started in the Asian, Middle Eastern area of the world. Okay, that's where their main focus is. They're all very heavily focused on meditation. They're all very heavily focused on karma and other good work type things. So making sure that you are very kind in how you act, making sure that you are very gracious in how you treat the other people around you and the animals in your care, things like that. But they are different as far as who they follow. So Buddhism was started by Buddha. Jainism was really labeled after Jane. Started with a C. She correlated all the different information. And then Hinduism, they believe, was just always there. Hinduism doesn't have a founder who started it. It was just a lot of common practices of the people in that time. In Hinduism, there are many gods for many different reasons. There's lots of different temples all over that focus on these different gods. Jainism doesn't really focus on temples very much. If they do, they have one, and it's typically of Buddha. Buddhists only have Buddha. That's it. There's no other gods that they worship, just Buddha. In the Hinduism, they had a caste system. So society was divided into the highers and the lowers. And if you were lower, you couldn't do certain thing. In Buddhism and Jainism, they don't have the caste system. They're all more equals. Okay. In Hinduism, when they go to the temple, they view Buddha as a reincarnation of Vishnu, who is one of their gods. Buddhism doesn't think that Buddha was a reincarnated previous god. They believe Buddha was a person who had this great enlightenment through his actions of meditating and his commitment to doing his best and in achieving that enlightenment. They believe it as different. So it's been very interesting learning about these different religions. Now, in our next video, we're going to be going over to more of common day Iran, Iraq, and we're going to be looking at a religion that I've only heard of once, and that's from a resident that I was taking care of at one time. Zoroastrian is what we're going to look at next. But if you enjoyed today's video about Buddhism, if you learned something, I would greatly appreciate it if you would like this video. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel so you can get that information when we put it out for our next video as well. Thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate your time and your attention and your willingness to ask the questions and to learn more every day. Because the more you learn, the more you grow. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Bye.